morning, everyone. Welcome to Decade Update. I'm Josh Kleiman.
I'm Isaac Bilso.
I'm Noah Safer. Today we're going to be looking at the 1960s, all of its ups, downs, and in-betweens.
On May 1st, 1960, the USSR shot down an American aircraft over Soviet territory. Immediately after, Eisenhower addressed the media, claiming that the plane was only a weather research plane to record climate data. I know that janitors make the same amount of money as doctors over there, but Dwight, who do you think you're fooling? A mysterious plane flying at an undetectable altitude over enemy territory, and you say you're looking at clouds? Eisenhower's reaction is like when you're cheating off a friend's test and you pretend to look off into space deep in thought when the teacher catches you. It may have worked in 9th grade, but this is a communist superpower we're dealing with. Eisenhower later admitted that the plane was in fact a U-2 spy plane, but it was a great try. The incident further increased tensions between America and the Soviet Union and set up numerous future conflicts.
A year later, in August of 1961, the Soviets began construction of the Berlin Wall in order to keep East Berliners from fleeing to Allied-controlled West Berlin. At this point, Khrushchev is just a 3-year-old child, and the East Berliners are a kitten who desperately does not want to be held. The more people who run away, the tighter Khrushchev holds onto the kitten's tail. The wall was under constant surveillance and armed guard 24/7. To assist the East Berliners, the United States Air Force airdropped rations and supplies to the trapped residents. You know, Khrushchev gets a lot of flack for this, but the wall still technically worked, right? If only there was some forward-thinking, innovative American leader who could apply this fantastic idea of population control to the wonderful country of America. I mean, I can't see how building a border wall would cause any kinds of problem whatsoever.
Cold War tensions peaked in October of 1962 with the Cuban Missile Crisis. The Soviet Union was exposed to have been storing nuclear weapons in Cuban warehouses. Let me get this straight. So it's okay when the US has nukes targeted at the USSR in Greece and Turkey, but then when the Soviets try to build up counter-artillery in Cuba, it's unspeakably evil? That's like when you're walking in the city and see a homeless person. You always lie that you are out of cash, but then when you see someone else do the same thing, you say, what, you can't even give the guy $1? The dispute was settled with the immediate removal of Russian weapons from Cuba, the removal of American weapons from Greece and Turkey, as well as the establishment of a direct telecommunications hotline from Washington to Moscow. So basically, this whole dispute was just a young couple fighting, where the answer is, as always, we just aren't communicating enough.
On April 17th, 1961, the Kennedy administration launched the Bay of Pigs invasion in Cuba. The operation was originally thought of, developed, and organized by Mr. Dwight David Eisenhower. Yet the event was actually executed during just the 3rd month of JFK's presidency. How convenient for Ike. I mean, let's be honest, Eisenhower knew this plan was going to fail right when he laid eyes on the group of Cuban refugees he was training. He got out of that one just in time to say, not my problem, I'm not president. So on a technicality, not the best start for JFK, but we all know who is really at fault here. I mean, what exactly was the plan here, Dwight? I mean, 1,400 revolutionaries against the entire Castro regime? Why not send the US military? You know, that one that we spend billions of dollars each year on to maintain? I get that it would have been a cool underdog story, but I mean, really, 1,400 soldiers? Surprisingly, it was an utter failure, with all 1,400 soldiers either dying or surrendering in just 24 hours. Here's an actual picture of Eisenhower upon realizing of the failed invasion in Cuba. Bet he was glad to be retired after that one.
The USA gets another chance to prove its superiority to the Soviet Union in the ongoing space race of the 1960s. The USSR launched Sputnik back in 1957, and so of course the Americans had to get involved. I mean, leave it to the Americans to not be able to take a joke. Sputnik literally means fellow traveler in Russian. It sounds like the Russians were just trying to chill in space and have a good time, and the Americans just had to crash the party. But whatever, it's not like the Russians could keep us from getting there. What, are they going to build a wall around it? Over the next 12 years, the United States put every cent not spent on military power into funding space travel, which included the founding of NASA. On July 16, 1969, the United States landed the first men on the moon. Just a week later, NASA frantically announced the first lunar rescue mission, because they forgot the third guy, Michael Collins. Nobody knows who that is anyway, though, so don't feel bad. Meanwhile, back home, Americans are experimenting with psychedelic mushrooms. Coincidentally, in 1969, thousands of other Americans claim to have went to the moon as well.
Throughout the 1940s and 50s, North Vietnam under Ho Chi Minh grew as a communist presence in Southeast Asia. Fearing the so-called domino effect, President Kennedy first decided to deploy CIA operatives in 1961 and then actual troops in 1962 in order to prevent the communist spread. By the end of 1962, there were about 9,000 American troops stationed in southern Vietnam in order to aid our anti-communist allies against their northern enemies. At this point, the US was involved in yet another war that, for lack of better terms, was none of our damn business. Our presence in Vietnam grew rapidly until it reached about 550,000 troops by the end of the 1960s. It was later revealed that the escalation of the war in Vietnam was not to prevent communism, but only to gather a crowd large enough to book Bob Hope. We tried to get Marilyn Monroe early in the war, but let's just say she was a bit preoccupied back home with presidential affairs. The war continued and American forces fought bravely, despite their many disadvantages. The war reached a climax in the Battle of Saigon, in which North Vietnamese forces laid siege upon the city, which was previously under Southern control, and pushed back American forces and their allies. Despite the major loss in Saigon, the war in Vietnam is seen by the US to be a major success.
Well, hold off on that one. I don't really know if we won this one.
What makes you say that? We're America.
I know, but we still lost 58,000 guys, and progress really wasn't made into Vietnamese territory.
So you're saying it was a tie?
I mean, think about it. Vietnam's still communist today.
Well, at least we won the war in Korea.
So there you have it, folks. That wraps up the 1960s. We try to fight communism against the entire world. We train poor foreign refugees to fight the entire Castro regime for us and play the world's most expensive game of anything you can do, I can do better.
That about wraps it up.
Thanks everyone for watching.
See you next time.